Hi, so in today's video, we're going to be talking about how you can control your outbound network access in Azure using an Azure firewall. So a lot of companies tend to kind of want to do this as their overall, as a part of their overall security plan. And the reason being is they can limit, some companies want to start to try to limit access to maybe certain websites, limit the outbound IP addresses, ports that can be accessed, things like that, and just to kind of just a way to kind of security tighten up security around their network. So one way basically to do this is using Azure's firewall, and what we'll do is we'll actually set up a test network to deploy an Azure firewall. So we'll have to create a default route essentially, and we'll have two subnets, one for our test server and then one for our actual Azure firewall. Now in a production network, you'll probably have your Azure firewall and its own vnet, and it'll be more in like a hub and spoke model. So all your other vnets and networks will actually peer to your firewall vnet and then access the firewall that way. But in this lab, we'll keep it in just two separate subnets. And with the Azure firewall, we'll create a firewall policy, and you can configure application rules that define like fully qualified domain names, such as like google.com and things like that that can be accessed from the subnet. And then network rules that define like source IP addresses, protocol, destination port, destination address, things like that. So we're going to go ahead and do this through the Azure portal. A lot of this stuff can be created with Terraform or Azure CLI. We're going to keep it simple today and kind of just walk through how to set this up using the portal. So you will need a free Azure account. And to get started, we're going to go ahead and create a resource group here. Now, I already have a resource group created here, and just go ahead and do create resource group and type in like test FWRG. And then once your resource group's created, you're going to go ahead and go into that there and click create. So now we're going to need to create this VNet. So this VNet is basically like a virtual network that kind of houses your environment. So it's like your own isolated network within Azure. So if you go into Marketplace and look for networking, you should see Virtual Network by Microsoft. So it's an Azure service. So we're going to go ahead and hit create. And then we want to put this inside of our newly created resource group. And we're going to call this test firewall VNet. VN, so for VNet. Go to security. We'll go ahead and skip that. Actually, just make sure you're in the right region. So East US, correct. Keep all this there the same. We'll accept the defaults here. So 16 is our CIDR. And then for the address range, we'll actually go, let's edit this if we can. Let's go 10.0.1.0. And then we'll go let's go 26. And then let's go ahead and hit save. And then now we're going to hit, let's see, we're going to add another subnet. And we're going to name this, let's see, okay. So we're going to go same as CIDR range. Name for this is going to be workload. And then, so let's actually call this test VM subnet. Starting address for this range is going to be 10.0.2.0, and then it's going to be a /24. And let's go ahead and hit add there. And then for this one, actually, instead of calling it default, let's change this to, let's go Azure dash firewall subnet. Okay. So now we got that. Let's go ahead and review and create that. So we got one virtual network, two different subnets there. Now that's deploying, so let's give that a second here. All right, so those are deployed, and now let's go back to, let's actually just go to our resource, make sure those are in there and good. So, okay, and then let's make sure our subnets are there. Okay, cool. Now you might say, why is this Azure actually reserves? Obviously, you got the subnet, the network address, the broadcast address, and then three Azure reserved IP addresses that they use for various things. So you get a 251 available. So each time you're subnetting something, you lose 5 addresses. So we're going to go back home here, and we're going to go ahead and create a virtual machine. Now this virtual machine is going to go into our test network, and so that's going to be what we use to test our Azure firewall. So we're just going to use this 2019 server here, and let's just go ahead and go down through these and put it into our resource group. Virtual machine name, let's just call it test. Let's call it test VM. Region East US, availability zone. Let's not worry about it. Zones 1. That's for like, more like redundancy type stuff if we wanted to kind of span or put it in a specific one. Since we only need one, we're only going to put it in one there. Standard is fine. x86 or x64 or 64-bit. We just need a should see if they have like a free tier. I don't want nothing running while we're looks like that's the cheapest actually. So let's see. Cost hourly 13 cents an hour. Well, what's this one? That looks good. Yeah, we don't need anything crazy. Let's select that one. Just might take a little while to kind of get started since it's pretty small. Yeah, you know what, actually. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so we'll keep that username administrator. Usernames must not be clear. Okay, let's just call this K Sims admin. And the password. All right, it's not long enough. All right. All right, so we got our password there. And then under the public inbound ports, we'll just do none there. And basically the public inbound ports would be if we want to allow specific ports into that server there from our from outside the network or whatever. But we're going to control the traffic somewhere else down the line here. So we're just going to go ahead and see inbound. Make sure it wasn't like anything outbound. Okay, so we're going to go to next to disk. We're going to accept the disk, go to networking. And let's see. Make sure, let's see that virtual network. And yeah, we want to make sure that's selected. It's under the test VM subnet. We don't need a public IP there. And then network security group. Don't think, yeah, we'll just keep that there. None. So all this is good. So management. And just checking over, making sure there's nothing specific that we need to make sure that we turn on or off here. So I think we should be good. Let's go ahead and hit review and create. Boot9, I will disable that. And this is basically like, so custom data is if you want to put like some script that pre-configures specific stuff like you put PowerShell or something in there that you want to run, during the provisioning phase. But we don't need anything in there. So let's go ahead and review and create that. So this might take a little bit of a second here to get going. So we're going to go ahead and let that get built up here. So our VM's created here. We go to our resource, check it out. So that's up and running. We're going to go ahead and now get over to creating our firewall. So create resource, firewall, and we're going to do the Azure service firewall here. Then you're going to click create. And then now we want to just make sure we put this into our new resource group. Let's give this a name here. We're going to call this test firewall. East US is fine. Just do zone 1 for availability zone. Keep it premium, and then we're going to add a new firewall policy. For that policy, just call it firewall policy. We're going to do premium now. You can do standard or basic. There's some various differences between the two as far as what you can and can't do in your policy, but we'll do premium. It does charge you for a full hour, which I think is like, I don't know, 30 cents or something an hour, but that's fine. If you want to, we can run through it real quick and you'll be able to delete all these quick enough just to kind of see how the setup goes. So I'm going to keep it on premium here. And then I'm going to choose an existing network. I'm going to put this inside our test vnet we created. And the virtual network must have a subnet name. Okay. So actually, it looks like we need to we need to change the name of that subnet to Azure Firewall Subnet. So that must be a requirement that wasn't aware of. So let's go back in here into our vnet, go into our subnets, and I'm going to change the name of this, and it looks like we can't. So let's go ahead and delete this. 10.0.1.0/26. And then let's go ahead and add another one here once this gets refreshed. So Azure Firewall Subnet 10.1.0/6. None. Save. All right, now let's go back to our creation of the firewall. Name, like I said, it's going to be test firewall. East US is fine. Zone 1, premium. We're going to, still need to add a new one. I'm going to do oh, what do we say? Test or firewall, let's call firewall policy. An existing network. Okay. So it must, maybe it picks it up automatically there. I thought we were gonna maybe have to choose that. So we're gonna hit add a new IP. So we're gonna need a public IP address. We're gonna call this firewall public IP and just hit OK. And then we're just gonna go ahead and review and create this. So that's it for that. And then create. So now that we got our firewall set up, what we're going to need to do is we're going to create a route in the subnet where the VM sits to route traffic to the through the firewall. So we're going to go to networking. Let's actually go back to our resource group here. And this is actually still creating. So let's give this a second here. So now that that's completed, it took a little bit there to complete. So now we'll go ahead and get that default route created. So we're going to go into networking. Where's our vnet? So, and let's look for a route. Okay, and then looks like we're gonna, let's okay, so we're gonna need to add this to our test resource group. Region East US, we're just gonna call this test. Or I'll just call it just route table. And then let's see. I think that should be it. Then we're going to go to the resource there. We're going to go to subnets. And then we're going to associate the firewall network. And then we're going to put our VMs, our VM subnet into this route table. So we're basically associating this route subnet to this route table to then be able to configure some routes to our firewall. And then we're going to go to routes here. We're going to hit add. And for the name, we'll just do firewall user defined route. Let's see. I'm going to do for the address, the destination is going to be 0.0.0.0. It's basically just a default route. Oop, take that extra dot out. And the next hop is going to be virtual appliance. And we're going to need to, I don't think I grabbed the IP address of the firewall. Let me open up another tab and clear out of that. So if I go to route, let's go to our firewall here. We should be able to get it on the, so here. No, actually, no, we want the, the outside. We want the inside IP address. So we want the private IP address. We're going to stick that in there. Hit add. Now subnets, since we're in the same vnet, can talk to each other unless you have some security groups and things like that that kind of define what can talk to what, things like that. So now that we got that, we got hit OK. We got all that set in. So basically, we got a route that essentially says anything going to this destination, send it to the virtual appliance, which is our Azure firewall. So now we're going to go ahead and configure an application rule that essentially will allow outbound access through the firewall to google.com. So we're going to open up that. Let's go back home here. And we should have a firewall policy here. And then we're going to select where it says application rules. Add a rule collection. And just name this app-google. Rule type is going to be application, priority. Let's just do 200. Basically what this does is it groups your rules in like priority precedence. So 100 being at the top, 65,000 or whatever being at the bottom. So it's good to kind of put them in increments of 100. That way you can add some rules in between if you need to. So then we're going to do an allow, and then under the rules name, we're going to put allow Google. And for the source, we're going to do anything coming from 10.0.2.0/24. Protocol type is going to be HTTP, HTTPS. And then we're going to put in www.google.com. And then we're going to hit add. So now we're going to configure a network rule, and what this is going to do is it's going to allow outbound access to 2 IP addresses on port 53. So basically, we're going to add some DNS servers to be able to query, obviously, google.com from the inside. So let's go ahead and go to network rules here. And we're going to add one. Name's going to be, let's say, allow-DNS. It's going to be network. Priority, let's do 200 again. Allow default rule collection group. For the name, let's just do allow DNS IP address, and then it's going to be again 10.0.2.0/24, and a protocol UDP since we're doing DNS. Destination port 53, destination type IP address, and we're going to put in 209.244.0.3, comma 209.244.0.4, and these are just outside reachable DNS servers. Filtered. Oh, so this looks like the application rule is still. Failed to add the rule collection. Oh, okay, let's give this a second here. So yeah, it looks like it didn't go through there. Let me see. I might have see, allow DNS, might have put something wrong in here. So 200, allow, we want to do, oh, you know, I think I chose that first one. We need to allow network rule collection group. Allow DNS 10.0.20/24, protocols UDP, destination port 53, and then the IP addresses again. Oh 9.244.0.4. And let's try this again here. Okay. Now that should get created. Now what we're going to need to do is we're going to create a destination NAT rule. So what this is going to allow us to do is RDP into our server from an outside IP address. So instead of us configuring it earlier on the actual VM, we're going to control it through here. And this is what a lot of firewalls do. When you need to access internal resources, you have to NAT your, you have to do some, because you have a internal private IP address is not internet routable. So you have to route basically your internal resources out the network using a routable IP address that's usually configured, which is our public IP for the firewall here. So we'll add a rule collection here, and I'm just going to put allow RDP, and then it's going to be destination NAT. Let's do 200 again for the priority. And it's going to be DNAT rule collection group. And then under name, it's going to do allow RDP source address. Now this is going to be any, because this is actually the traffic coming from the internet to your internal network. The port is, or the protocol type is going to be TCP, and then for the port, it's going to be 3389, which is the RDP port. For the destination type, it's going to be IP address, and then it's going to be the public IP of the firewall, which, let me see here. Go back to the, oh, there we go. Copy that. So that's going to be what it's going to go to, but then we're going to translate it to the server's private IP address. So if we go back into our resource, or actually let's find our server, it's SVM. We need the private IP addresses is right here. Take that and plug that in there. I didn't like that. Oh. All right, so, and then the port it's going to translate to is 3389. And then we're going to do an add there. All right, so now that we have those set up, let's go into our actual VM. And we're going to go to, where's the settings at? We are going to change we can find a oh, you know what? We're actually on, let's go to the network interface. And we're going to change the DNS servers. Here we go. So we're going to do custom. And then we're going to add those two that we allowed access out to. So 209.244.0.3, 209.244.0.4. And we're going to save that. So now that we have that set, we're basically set up to be able to route through to the firewall now. So if we grab the firewall's outside IP address, we should be able to open up a remote desktop session and get to it here. So we need the public IP. Just throw that in there. And then it's Sims admin. So now we tested the policy we're able to get from the outside, internal. So this is our vnet being able to, so now this is actually a little more secure in a sense, because instead of slapping a public IP directly onto the server, we have the traffic flowing through to the firewall. So then maybe you can start, you can kind of go through and maybe see if there's other things you can do as far as alerting or, logging, things like that. So it's best to have it go through the firewall and be able to kind of control a lot of the things that you normally couldn't with it going straight to that particular server. It's public IP. And that's just almost, let me see here. We'll need to turn, let's see if we can get to google.com. Let's turn this off. Some of these servers are starting to put edge on them, so we might get, okay, there we go. Sometimes I will have to install Google Chrome or something to get rid of the having to use the edge. So let's go in here. So now what we're going to do is test if we can get to the google.com, but we shouldn't be able to get anywhere else. So this is a slower server, so there's some delay in a lot of things trying to run at once. Your virtual machine, things were running a little too slow, so up to about 8 gigs of RAM there. So now let me go ahead and see. We should be able to go into Edge here, run some parallel processes. All right, so if we go to, let's say we go to cnn.com, shouldn't be allowed to. But if we go to google.com, well, actually www.google.com, that works. So you'd probably do like an asterisk google.google.com if you wanted to go to all the subdomains and stuff like that. So we go to www.microsoft.com, nothing. So that's just a way there to kind of, test getting out to your outside network. But again, that's the gist of Azure Firewall and being able to manage outbound network access and also inbound access to resources on your network. You typically, some companies go with like, Cisco firewalls, Palo Alto, stuff like that. So this is just one of Azure's offerings that kind of lets you use some of their built-in services for things that you don't want to do as far as full configurations of networking devices. So again, if you have any questions in regards to this lab, shoot me a comment down below. I'll be sure to get back with you on any questions you may have or any issues you run into. Again, check out my blog, letmetechyou.com, to see some other labs and networking and tips. Again, subscribe. Check out some of my other videos. Again, thanks for tuning in. Hope to see you next time.